If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another thread video for you guys. I wanted to start this one off because I remembered a long time ago Loudwire attempted to do a list like this, and I feel like, you know what, Loudwire is just not a very good channel anymore, so I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm sure myself and a lot of other people out there can come up with a list like this much better. And this thread is going to be 10 metal vocalists who can sing you to sleep and scare you to death. What do I mean by that? Well, basically, it's not a top 10 list, it's just 10 vocalists that I feel do that vocal flip of doing clean vocals and harsh vocals very well. And what I mean is, like, the clean vocals can be soothing enough to sing you to sleep, and then the harsh vocals scary enough to scare you to death. Over the years and over the decades in metal, we've seen a lot of vocalists go in both directions. However, I have 10 people here that I think do it pretty damn well. So with that being said, if you guys want to respond to this, leave a video response, make a video and tag me in it so that way I know that you made it and I can watch it and maybe drop a comment. But without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to kick off with a pretty big name right here, Devin Townsend. So yeah, Devin Townsend, I think is definitely one of the more dynamic vocalists going right now. Well, really been going since the late 90s in metal. After all, he got his start in Steve Vai's band, doing crazy wild vocals, doing like crazy high power metal-esque falsettos. But then you get to his stuff in Strapping Young Lad and then his solo work, then you really get a sense of what Devin's voice is all about. The harsh vocals, you primarily heard his harsher vocals in Strapping Young Lad and maybe in some of the heavier parts of a Devin Townsend song. But when he does those harsher vocals, he literally sounds like a serial killer that's ready to just slice and dice you in a fucking alley. But then when you get to his softer, cleaner vocals, especially in the Devin Townsend project, or any other solo project he's done, after all, the guy's done a lot of projects. But when you hear him do his more soothing vocals, they are actually really, really beautiful, especially when they're like lower in the register, almost to the point where it's like he's kind of singing a lullaby to you. I definitely think Devin Townsend could be a vocalist who could put his vocals on top of any lullaby, and I believe any child could easily bob their head at and then fall asleep after the fact. But yeah, just a spoiler alert, this list is going to mostly comprise of like European vocalists. I do have quite a few North American vocalists on here. Devin, you could make a case for being the best out of the bunch, but there might be one other North American vocalist that could give him a run for the money. We'll get to him later. But yeah, Devin Townsend. Next up, now we get into some European stuff, and that is Mikko Katamaki from Swallow the Sun. So yeah, I remember first time checking out Swallow the Sun when the album When a Shadow's Forced into Light came out in 2019, and hearing like Mikko's vocal flip, like doing the soft, soothing cleans and then the big death roars and black metal screams that he does. Definitely when he gets into the growls and the black metal screams, he either sounds like he's pissed off or super in anguish, like really in super pain and a lot of anguish when screaming, and when you hear his roars, it sounds like he's ready to just punch you in the face. But then when you hear his soothing vocals, again, similar to Devin, much more sullen, more softer in the register, and he really knows how to tell stories with those more soothing vocals. Then again, he can tell you a story with screaming and growling at you, but when it comes down to his clean vocals, Sometimes he goes more mid-range, maybe a little bit higher, and then sometimes you get that like low gothic, almost baritone style, similar to another vocalist that I'll talk about much later in this video. But yeah, Miko's vocals, I definitely think more people should pay attention. Even though Swallow the Sun has garnered a pretty wide fan base, I still think the band and Miko doesn't get brought up in the broader conversations. And I think that both Miko and the band deserve more praise and more love and respect. And I think Miko's vocals, not only the riffs, but Miko's vocals, I think can definitely lure in a non-fan to being a fan of this band. So yeah, Miko. Next up, we get into one of my personal favorites out of Europe, and one that I don't see a whole lot of like people talking about, especially in recent years, and that is Wintersorg from his solo band Wintersorg, formerly of Borknagar. He's a Swedish vocalist and also a very damn good guitarist as well, all things considered. But yeah, Wintersorg, I primarily know of him through Borknagar. Like, I've become such a huge fan of Wintersorg in terms of his vocal style. To me, the way he does his flip, like the cleans and then his signature black metal scream and even death roars you get from time to time, he definitely has his own style of doing that vocal flip. Whereas, yeah, his black metal screams are very scary and very intense. His death roars, when they do show up, are pretty brutal. But his cleans, again, another example of a guy who could probably sing you a song and you could easily fall in love with. Like, his clean vocals kind of feel like a hybrid almost of early James Hetfield and modern Matt Heafy. Like, he almost feels like a European Hetfield, Heafy kind of vocalist. Like, he has a similar range to those two. Granted, I think Wintersorg might go a little bit higher in his register, especially in songs like their Borknagar's cover of, ironically, Metallica's My Friend of Misery. Like, you hear Wintersorg trying to go a little higher than you usually hear him in. But yeah, his cleans I've always been a big fan of. Personally, he was my favorite vocalist of Borknagar. It's a shame he's not in the band anymore. And no disrespect to ICS Vortex, he could have been another one that could have been on this list. But I went with Wintersorg just because I like Wintersorg's style just a little bit more than ICS Vortex for me when it comes to Borknagar. But yeah, Wintersorg, I think, is another one that should get more respect and talk. And now we get into, we're almost halfway through this list, actually. So next up, vocalist number 4, we have Tommy Joutsen from Amorphis. After all, Amorphis, one of the biggest bands in all of Europe. I mean, most European metal fans should know about Amorphis, and especially with Tommy, but for the uninitiated, Tommy, I think he's been the vocalist since, like, the early 2000s, and he's mostly a clean vocalist, but when you do hear him do his death roars, they are up there in terms of grittiness, up there with someone like a Johan Hegg from Amon Amarth. So yeah, he's got a hell of a death roar, but it's his clean vocals. Like, he has some real calm and soothing clean vocals. Especially you hear them a lot in, like, a lot of the modern Amorphis albums, like from the late 2000s to right now. Like, their run since, I would say, an album like Skyforger all the way up to the album last year, Halo. Like, you just hear Tommy, like, pushing himself in terms of a vocalist, like doing more over-the-top stuff, but also getting more into his death roars to show that, hey, I'm not just a clean vocalist, I can death growl just as good as everybody else out there. And I think he's one of those guys, especially at the Finnish scene, along with Miko, that does that vocal flip pretty well, and it doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel unnatural, it feels perfect. So yeah, Tommy, Amorphis as a whole, absolutely love. There you go. Alright, next up, we're back to North America again. Now, this one, I feel like wouldn't see a lot of people put this guy on a list like this, but for me, he's one of my all-time favorites, and that's Chuck Billy from Testament. So yeah, probably the only thrash vocalist that I'll have on the list like this, and it's because Chuck Billy's vocal range, I feel some people kind of don't give him enough credit. I feel like when it comes to his clean vocals, I'm a huge fan of Chuck's clean vocals, especially on the ballad-ish tracks like The Ballad and The Legacy, Return to Serenity. I know some people may not like his vocals on those songs. I absolutely love him, and I think his clean voice, I feel, gets a little bit underappreciated. Like, he's mostly known for his thrash delivery, which rightfully so. I mean, his thrash delivery is among the best. But also, even his death growls, I think, are quite something. Like, his death growls are very, very brutal, especially in, like, albums like Low and The Gathering, and even nowadays, whenever you hear his death growls come in here and there on a track, it really amps up the brutality of a Testament song. But when you get to his clean vocals, I think he's capable, similar to a guy like Devin, that could sing a child to sleep seamlessly and not feel strange. So yeah, I feel like Chuck Billy's clean vocals don't get enough appreciation because I think he's a hell of a singer, not just a thrash vocalist, but overall vocalist. I think he's quite dynamic and perfectly fits this list. Now we're about at the halfway point, so now moving into the next vocalist, and this one, probably some people will roll their eyes at, but hey, you gotta give the guy credit. Corey Taylor of Slipknot and Stone Sour. For me, kind of another one of those super dynamic vocalists. Like, I think his death growl, or like harsh vocals, are definitely enough to scare the uninitiated, because especially a song like A Liar's Funeral off of the Slipknot album We Are Not Your Kind, that harsh death roar he delivers, where he goes, liar! It's like, oh my god, he's really freaking me out. But then you get into his clean vocals, and yeah, he can actually go super high. Like, he's done, like, super high falsettos in the past, back in the early Stone Sour demo years. But even his clean vocals, very soothing and calming and quite tuneful. And perhaps even filled with a little bit of soul, if you really want to use that as a descriptor. But yeah, I think Corey Taylor, yeah, some people might be tired of his opinions about stuff. I don't mind hearing his opinions on, like, Kanye West being a moron when it comes to rap music, because Kanye's an overrated rapper for all you rap fans out there. But yeah, but yeah, Corey Taylor definitely, I feel, would be perfect for a list like this, because of the way he can sing quite tuneful and also growl like nobody's business. Corey Taylor, the man. Next up, now we're going to get into, well, aside from one other vocalist, we're going to get into a run where a lot of these guys were in the same band. Next up, Jonas Rinsk from Catatonia and Bloodbath. Jonas Rinsk vocals have definitely always been an interesting thing for me, because I've not listened to a whole lot of Catatonia stuff aside from the new album and the first two albums, Dance of December Souls and Brave Murder Day. But Jonas' vocals, like his screams and growls, I think he can match up to growlers and screamers like a Chuck Schuldiner or a David Vincent, or even a Corthon or a Dead or somebody like that when it comes to doing screams and growls. But his clean voice, I think his clean vocals definitely kind of feel like a huge inspiration for a lot of modern Swedish vocalists, like the vocalist of Soen, for example. I think Jonas could be seen as a huge influence on him. But yeah, like, his cleans definitely carry more sorrow, I would say, especially in a song like the song Day off of Brave Murder Day. Like, his clean voice definitely feels like it carries with it more depression and sorrow and sadness, just sadness overall, because he could probably not only sing you to sleep, but make you cry when you hear, especially if you read along to some of the lyrics on some Catatonia songs. It can probably bring a tear to your eye. And then, of course, his growls. Like, whenever he does growl, like, because he'll growl the Catatonia songs that have the growling vocals, and I've seen clips out there of him doing the song Murder, and he's got a brutal, brutal snarl to him. But yeah, Jonas Rinsk. Next up, we get into the final North American vocalist, and you could argue probably the best American example of a vocalist who could sing you to sleep and scare you to death. Mike Patton from Faith No More, Mr. Bungle, among so many other projects. Of course, Mike Patton, you could maybe make a case for being the greatest singer of all time, just because he has such a wide range of vocals. Like, he can do everything. Growl, scream, opera, croon, rap, falsetto, just the whole 9 yards, essentially. But yeah, whenever you hear him do his more harsher vocals and like super high screams, they can definitely make somebody feel very, very uncomfortable. But then, even when you get to his like clean vocals, sometimes whenever he's like doing like soft crooning, like in a couple of Faith No More tracks here and there, he can probably bring a smile to your face right before you go to sleep. And it's just for how he can like lower his range down to be more of that like soothing, tuneful vocal style, similar to like a Corey Taylor or even a Devin Townsend, like very much in that veneer a little bit. But yeah, Mike Patton, I would say, in terms of like overall dynamics, probably the best vocalist out of everybody on this list. But I do think there's one other vocalist who could probably give him a run for the money. And that man is Dan Swano from Edge of Sanity, Bloodbath, Nightingale, Witherscape, among a lot of other projects, again, similar to a Mike Patton. Of course, most people should know I'm a huge Dan Swano fanboy, just because the guy is just so immensely talented at all aspects of life, it seems. Guitars, bass, drums, piano, keyboards, vocals, production, mixing, mastering, engineering, everything. Like, the guy is just super talented. And of course, I had the honor and privilege of speaking to him last August on the Horseman podcast. Now, Swano's vocals, immediately, I would say his death growl, among some of the best death growls you'll ever hear. Like in Edge of Sanity, some of the Witherscape tracks, Moon Tower, that album. He's got a brutal, aggressive growl. But his cleans, I would say next to Mike Patton, the biggest range out of everybody on this list. Like, Swano's voice can start off from this like low gothic baritone. He can even go as high as any power metal vocalist can. But he has, I would say, and I've used the word soulful a couple of times. Swano, I would say, is the vocalist with the most soul in his vocals when it comes to the cleans. Like, he belts it out, or he can even, like, go super soothing and soft. Say, like, in the clean part at the end of Add Reality off of the Moon Tower album, when he gets into those clean passages, it sounds beautiful. Like, he's got such a great voice overall, and still has an incredible growl and clean voice even still to this day. But yeah, Dan Swano, Dan the Man Swano. Let's get that right. And now that leaves only one left, and that is, I think most people hadn't, this would probably have been one of the first people I would expect somebody to mention in a topic like this. Michael Ockerfeld of Opeth, Bloodbath, Storm Corrosion, whatever else. And similar to Dan Swano, one of my biggest idols when it comes to singing, along with Swano and a James Hetfield, a Bruce Dickinson, Ronnie James Dio, so on and so forth. But Ockerfeld, like, okay, immediately, one of the top 5 greatest death metal vocalists of all time. His snarling growl sounds so evil and brutal and demonic, but yet he enunciates very well, which makes it even more frightening to the uninitiated, who are probably going to be very frightened by Michael Ockerfeld's growls. But his clean voice, I love his clean voice just as much as his growls. Like, his clean vocals, similar to Swano, very tuneful, very soothing, very soulful. Granted, not as big of a range as Swano. Like, Ockerfeld definitely has a certain box to his clean vocals that he goes up and down in, but it works because he does it so masterfully well, and it doesn't feel strange at all. Like, definitely I would say, if you were to ask me his best clean vocal performance, it would probably be in the song Burden, which is arguably the saddest metal song I've ever heard. Like, he's crooning, he's belting, he's going soulful, soothing, calming. Like, I bet you he probably sung lullabies to his children before they went to sleep. I can almost guarantee that. But yeah, Michael Ockerfeld, he was the first one that came into my head, along with Swano, when it came to putting this list together of the vocalists who can sing you to sleep and scare you to death. Immediately, Ockerfeld and Swano were like no-brainers. But every other entry, I did have to kind of think about a little bit. But yeah, Michael Ockerfeld, in my opinion, one of the greatest dynamic vocalists in all of metal. Much respect. And that does it for this thread. So, like I said, I'm hoping you guys who are watching this that makes YouTube videos responds and tags me in it, so that way I know that you made it, and I can watch it and see what you guys think. Because I feel this is an interesting one, because there are a lot more vocalists out there who do both the vocal flips very well when it comes to, like, clean, soothing vocals and the nasty, harsh vocals. So there's definitely more I could have put on this list, but these were 10 that I thought of almost immediately or thought about for the shortest amount of time. But of course, that does it for this video. What did you guys think of this whole thing? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.